Welcome. Thanks for joining us. How does a sports team build a strong, sustained, and engaged fan base? What can data teach designers, owners, and operators about the evolving expectations and needs of different groups of fans? And how can architecture respond to data to create memorable experiences? In a world with increasing competition for our time, our attention, our money, these are vital questions. I'm Annie Merrill, Communications Manager with HOK, and with me is Bill Johnson, Design Principal with HOK's Sports, Recreation, and Entertainment Practice, and Abe Stein, Head of Innovation at the Sports Innovation Lab. Over the next 20 minutes, we're going to explore how data in all its permutations can and should inform the design of sports venues. We're going to invite everyone to please post questions in the comments section as we're talking. We're going to leave time at the end of the discussion to address those questions. And if we don't have time, we'll be sure to follow up with responses on LinkedIn, where this conversation will remain visible after today's discussion ends. So let's begin without further ado. Abe, let's start with you. What types of data does the Sports Innovation Lab analyze, and how does it help clients better understand their fans?
I mean, listen, that question's perfect. It's at the heart of who we are. Let me also say thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and joining this conversation. This is an exciting topic for us. Um, yeah, Sports Innovation Lab. We're all researchers at our heart, at our core of our business, at our DNA, down to the individual that we hire. We focus on research, and as researchers, we take a largely mixed methods, data driven approach to understanding the trends and the trajectories of the sports fan and the sports market. And so we do it a number of different ways. We have a proprietary data set that we're working with that is 20 million North American consumers transactions. So we are able to parse that data and look at that data, credit and debit transaction data over the course of almost 7, I believe, or 8 years of transactions. You can imagine just how many transactions that data set is to be able to parse. We combine that with a mix of other quantitative and qualitative methods, survey data that we collect from different surveys that we implement, in addition to qualitative analysis that we do from various panels and various text analysis approaches that we leverage. And so for us, it's really if anyone out there told you that they have the magic data set that is going to be the one set of data that you need to address all your questions, don't believe that person. We really come from a standpoint of mixed methods is fundamentally the most effective approach to doing this. And so we will leverage this with a variety of clients across the ecosystem, from sports partners and properties like leagues and teams and federations, venues and venue operators, technology companies that are integrating with them, to help them understand the trajectory of the fan communities that they're addressing at the end of the day.
That's super interesting. Could you talk a little bit about what some of those clients, whether that's teams or leagues or brands, what they maybe don't understand about their audiences when you're having conversations with them?
Yeah, part of how we made a name for ourselves as an organization is by addressing a very palpable fear and anxiety that exists in the sports industry around the attention economy and the proliferation of different forms of entertainment that are competing with sports. Don't get me wrong, sports is huge. Global sports is massive. We just came out of a World Cup. We're coming into another one. We can see the tremendous scale that you see. But because of new media technologies, because of new formats, because of new globalization of different media technologies and entertainment technologies, there's just an increased level of competition. And so across the entire ecosystem of sport, there's a concern that how are we going to keep up? How are we going to compete with? And years ago, it was Fortnite. Now it's metaverse conversations and NFT conversations. The question is, how are we going to compete with these evolving entertainment trends that are capturing the attention of different fan communities? And from our standpoint, the best way to do that is to understand your fan better. Sports has kind of leaned into, well, if you love us, you'll come back because of something like loyalty. Loyalty may not be enough anymore. It may be that you need to meet your consumers where they are. You need to meet them with entertainment propositions where they are. You need to be more interactive. You need to be more immersive. You need to bring in partners who are more aligned with your values. To understand that, you need to know what values your fans care about or what entertainment formats your fans care about. And so really that's the crux of our data approach is if you know your fan better, you will be able to target and acquire them in a more effective way.
Interesting. And be responsive, it sounds like, to
Yeah.
their needs and desires. And that's a perfect segue. My next question's for Bill. I'm just curious, as an architect, what do you feel like we can learn from the data illustrating fan desires and preferences that Abe's outlined?
Thanks, Annie, and hello, everyone. I'm equally excited to be here. And when I first met Abe, it was great because, if you ever meet somebody that's saying the exact same thing that you've been saying, except from a completely different point of view. So it's been really, really great for us to collaborate on this. I think that the challenge for architecture is where, Abe is looking at data and data points and talking about, the changing fan expectations. So teams can market and they can say things or they can modify their approach to the market a whole lot easier in communication than they can in the built environment. And so the challenge, I think, for designers and architects in coming up with these venues is how do we not only anticipate change but create buildings and venues that are transformable or adaptable? Because the one thing that I've seen, having done this for a long time, is that the change in fan expectations is happening more and more quickly. And so we have to be able to not only look in the crystal ball to a certain extent and sort of anticipate what we think the market is suggesting, what we're up against, what we compete with. We have to do that, and then we have to give some kind of advice to the owner or the team or the franchise. What's great about having somebody like Abe that is actually looking at the data and interpreting it is that that's really amazingly valuable for us too, because then we can say, well, based on maybe past experience, we're seeing this as a trend. We've talked about things that are really, really changing in the market. For example, it used to be you either sat in the upper seating bowl or the lower seating bowl, or you were lucky enough to be in a suite or in a club level, and that's not even close to what people are asking for these days. I mean, the whole notion of what that kind of segregation for fans meant in terms of the social aspect of where we see society going right now just doesn't fit anymore. So it's a very interesting time to have known these buildings pretty intimately and now seeing what the challenges that they face as we move forward.
Right. That idea of a fan or a season ticket holder not wanting to sit in the same seat game after game after game is really interesting. So could you talk a little bit about how are we designing to accommodate that kind of ever evolving desire? And then Abe, maybe if there's some specific data points or information you could plug in there.
Right. So, this notion of capacity is a really interesting one to me because back in the beginning when we were designing buildings, there was a program and the program said, okay, we think our market can handle, X thousand seats, right? And then we'll subdivide that again into certain qualities or certain locations or values of seats. But the interesting thing is it's a really old-fashioned idea, and it's based on a ticket manifest or an inventory of seats. And it was a really easy way to think about things. We have this many seats, they're all worth this amount of money, and that means I'm going to make, more or less this kind of income off of putting on an event. And people don't want to sit in one seat anymore. That's not how we interact socially. It's not how we act at home. And if we're going to spend the money and our resources to go out into a sports venue, we want to be social. We want to be with other people, and we don't want to sit in an uncomfortable seat that's, 30 seats in from the closest aisle, and we have to, get everyone to get up to go get to the restroom or go get a popcorn or whatever. So we're having to really shift the mentality about what capacity is. I mean, you can have the same amount of area, in a section of seats, and it can be sized for a group of people, but it isn't necessarily every person is assigned to a seat. And that is a really hard idea to get across to the industry, because that's just not the way the industry was ever structured. So, we have like soft seating, we have lounge areas, we have things that resemble your living room or your man cave or woman cave at home. And it's a capacity that is the same. And the value actually goes up and the social experience is much better. So that is a huge shift in what I have been doing for years and years. And I think that it actually is being really well received, because the other challenge in this is that if we go back into the ticketing office and we talk to the guys and girls back there and say, hey, what do you think this would be worth? They don't know how to really react to that, because in a lot of markets, that's not even a product that's available, as an option. But every time we have done it, it's the first thing to sell out. People pay a premium for it, and they always wish they had more of it. So that tells me that intuitively, even without Abe's data, sometimes we're going probably in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, I'll pick up right there, because so much of what Bill is talking about and keying in the design world is this broader paradigmatic shift that we see in fandom, what we call the fluid fan at Sports Innovation Lab, that has been, and we always try to put this in a historical context. It's been ongoing, right? The ticket offices of sports were afraid of radio. Almost 100 years ago, because they thought people wouldn't attend. And then they were afraid of broadcast. And then they were afraid of satellite, right? And then they were afraid of OTT. And what we've seen is this constant friction between mediated sport and the live sport experience, because of a belief that sports properties had that their product was the game on the field, that their principal product, that the focus of their product was coming into a venue to see the action in front of you. Now, I'm not downplaying the importance of that. That's still a critical part of what drives people to go. But in our research, we also look at things like the power of togetherness, right? What that experience is like and how it compares to viewing a mediated sport experience in a bar, or maybe co-watching via an OTT platform that allows you to have social viewing, right? And how that can feed into the power of togetherness as well. Or many of these other aspects that Bill's talking about the mediated experience of a venue, or the experiential, wayfinding that you might have in a venue. So many venues these days are also just creating concourse experiences that are critical parts of that whole package of the product. And it's different for different sports cultures, and that's why it's really important to not be fully just led by the data, but also to have design, which is the art and science kind of balance of it. But really, this is a big shift in how sports properties are thinking about what a ticket buyer wants from their experience.
That's really interesting. I'm curious for you, Abe. What do you see as some of those obstacles to clients embracing that reality and then successfully leveraging the data that you guys are making available to them?
Yeah. So it's a few things. I mean, on the one hand, it's just the history of the power of sports and the kind of resistance to change because of the ongoing and persistent success. And so what I spoke to earlier about that, the kind of growing anxiety about competition in the attention economy, is part of what's feeding into the demand for more intelligence, more insights to guide the way they do work. I think too, though, a lot of sports organizations are just not institutionally staffed for analyzing data. They're not institutionally staffed for leveraging insights as a part of their strategy. They just haven't built robust business intelligence teams on the business side. It's interesting. They have actually some of the most impressive analytics teams when it comes to player performance, because they recognize the impact that success on the field or on the court or on the ice has on the bottom line. But that hasn't made its way yet to the front offices on a wide scale basis. So I think that's another piece of it as well too. I think the third piece is just that change happens quickly, and a lot of times it's just there's going to be a lagging effect in terms of our ability to tap into it. And so really a lot of what's been honed in digital media spaces like social media platforms and beyond in terms of approaches to data are now finding their way into the sports business. And it's not surprising that it's a little bit behind, but it's rapidly catching up.
Yeah, that's a good lead up to a question from the audience, which is, what are some of the most innovative ways that data is being used currently in the sports industry? And how do you see that evolving in the future for both of you?
Sure, I can take that one first, but I'll probably throw it to you, Bill, too, on because I
Okay.
have the same question from a design standpoint. So for sure, in the marketing offices of sports properties, there's conversations about how they acquire new fans, how they target new fans. It is also part of their sponsorship and corporate sales play, identifying where there are opportunities to target different potential sponsors based off of the intelligence that they have. And so a lot of that, we kind of put it under the umbrella of know your fans, which includes also know who's not your fans yet, right? Like who are you going to bring in and who are you going to get? And that's a big part of the way that data has been incorporated, or we're seeing it being incorporated into the regular work streams of sports business. Certainly on the media side, there's a bit more of a robust data practice. I mean, we've had things like Nielsen ratings for a long time. OTT has thrown a massive wrench into all of that. We're still coming to grips with what viewership of mediated sports means in an age of Twitch and Amazon Prime NFL, right? And how do we connect all those dots? I think what's coming down the line and what's next, and it's no mistake that I brought up the Amazon Prime influence, is the way our digital media experiences connect, right? And so how viewing a live sporting event on a mediated platform like Amazon Prime, and the data that they have on purchases I've made from my Prime subscription are going to come together in the form of new targeted marketing, right, and new targeted approaches to that. So that's the vanguard. That's certainly what's coming. I mean, I'm really curious to hear a little bit, and Bill, I'll toss it to you just in terms of the way insights and intelligence about fans is being brought into the conversation when you're talking to sports properties about renovations or designs and your architectural approach.
Well, I thank you. I've got to say that I've dealt with owners and franchises that have kind of given me a blank stare when you even bring this up. Okay, so I think what's interesting is the first thing that if you're heavily involved in a building or a franchise, you have to recognize that your fans, the people in that building, might not be there. They may not even be paying attention to the game, right? They may be there for a completely different reason. Your significant other he or she may not be involved at all in the baseball game or the basketball game. They might be there because they want to be with you. And so what are they doing when they're there? Well, I think the more we've uncovered things, we've realized that maybe the sort of standard sponsors that typically sponsor games are really too narrowly defined, right? It's not about pickup trucks and beer and cell phones. It might be about shopping. It might be about vacationing. It might be about something completely different. And the kind of creepy thing about it is that, we all know that this data is being collected on all of us, right? So you can start engineering. If you're really sensitive to it, you can start creating a game day experience based on fan behavior if you understand what they're doing. So I think, the two takeaways for me is sometimes people are not there for the reason you think they're there. And if they're not there, the sooner you discover what they're really excited about when they get there, the better off you're going to be. And it's going to open opportunities to generate revenue, to reach out to different markets that maybe aren't typically sports centric in terms of their sponsorship. And so those are kind of, big high level discussions that we're starting to have.
Interesting. So Abe, given the data that you and your team collect, how do you see fans changing over the next decade? And then Bill, I'd love to hear you respond to that and talk a little bit about the impact of those findings on venues.
Right. Yeah, how are fans changing is a huge question. We have defined it in our own work at Sports Innovation Lab by this concept of a fluid fan. A fluid fan is one who is constantly changing. They are empowered to find new sports properties to care about, new sports properties to latch onto, and they are open to change. I think the perception, and this is part of a broader global cultural trend that we're seeing in terms of a kind of openness and to change and dynamics, and we're seeing it happen in sports too. And I think the tension that is applying to the sports industry is that they have built their business on a sense of loyalty, and loyalty and openness are two not necessarily oppositional forces, but they are They are in relationship with one another in a friction way. And so understanding that, and this is the great example I always give, 10 years ago, just 10 years ago, being a Premier League soccer fan in the United States would have been very difficult. Media access was very limited. And I can watch curling now. I can also watch professional cornhole.
Yeah.
So just
Right.
to give you those examples, the competition even inside of the domain of sport is
Right.
growing, and there's so much opportunity to latch onto new things. And so I think that ultimately has an impact on the mediated sport experience. It also has an impact, I wouldn't say down the line, but on the live sport experience too. Because you know what? If I love the production of a cornhole tournament on television, I might want to go. And so actually, it's how do you bridge the gap between the digitally mediated and the live sport experience? I think that's like the critical question. And I know that's a piece that, Bill, you've thought about too, in terms of
Right.
how does your architectural design impact
Right.
production? How does it impact the mediated experience as well?
Well, absolutely. And the other thing, to Abe's point, there's so much competition now, right? So you have so many options, not only of what you watch or what you are a fan of, but where you watch it and how you interact with it. And, the couple of things that we haven't really talked about is that I do think the younger fans coming up want to align themselves with organizations that share their values. And they want people that care about the environment and sustainability. How are you being responsible about how you manage your facility or your venue? Those things are really becoming important, and rightfully as they should be. The other thing is that I think it used to be that the architecture was sort of expected to be iconic. I mean, it's an old kind of quote in the design industry that stadiums are modern day cathedrals because they became sort of symbolic of the communities in which they were built. But I'm seeing a shift away from just wanting to do something that's iconic to something that's authentic. And authentic is a much different sort of point of view. I want an experience that supports the community. I want a building that is environmentally responsible. I want to interact in a way and maybe spend my resources that will help a community grow and develop and maybe even diversify. And then, can the buildings start creating job opportunities and training opportunities that are far more than just opening the gates and letting people come in and watch a 3-hour sporting event? So those are kind of the sort of secondary messages that I think that as in an industry, we're starting to really recognize and start to put some real value on. So those are just some things that are, it's just constantly changing, but you have to kind of try to keep in front of it.
That's good. Another thing that's constantly changing is technology. We have gotten a few different questions about AR, AI. So I'd love for you guys to maybe talk about how AR is being used to enhance the fan experience and how artificial intelligence might impact design.
Well, I'll go first, Abe, and then you can follow
Yeah,
up
go
on
for
this
it.
one. I'm just going to do a little bit. I think the whole notion of being in the moment is what we're really trying to define. All the influences in terms of sort of when you look at sort of promoting an individual brand or social media or the role that influencers are starting to really play, the thing that's of most primary value is actually inserting yourself in the experience in a real time way, right? And so, AR and VR are starting to become more and more important, where you can kind of layer in the real experience with a simulated experience and make it more, I don't know, compelling or marketable, if you will. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I think the challenge will be, how do we continue to get people to come out to the venue when they have so many options to experience it in sort of, animated different ways remotely. So I'll let you respond to your thoughts, Abe, on that.
Yeah, sure. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, I'll take AR first, and then I'll talk a bit about AI as well. So I used to be a working video game developer before I had a career in sports. I was working in video games, and here we are all now on a video teleconference on the internet, all pointing to the fact that there is a massively accelerating comfort with digital domains, digital spaces, digital worlds, right? You see some of the most popular digital experiences from an entertainment standpoint are these digital spaces. FIFA has a Roblox activation that they launched in conjunction with the most recent World Cup. All of that to say that we are as a broad general trend as sports fans kind of comfortable with the blending of these two experiences, the blending of these two worlds. And so that to me is what augmented reality is, right? Virtual reality is all about telepresence. It's all about putting you in another place. AR is about being in a place but being immersed in an experience, about bringing digital experiences to your physical space, whether that is catching Pokemon, or I guess catching basketball players is the latest one, or whether it's, looking to see how a couch might look from Amazon in your living room, right? So for sure, that's going to be a huge part of what we've been talking about with the live sport experience too, because you want to bring what you're getting from the mediated television experience, or their mediated digital experience, video games of sports, and bring that to your live experience too. If I go to a soccer venue and I can look through my phone and pull up statistics on my phone that are overlaid on top of the action, that is an enriching experience. So AR is a huge trend. As for AI, I'll quickly say we wrote a report about a year and a half ago with Intel that was all about the role of AI in smart venues. And we made the case that AI needs to be understood as a new form of infrastructure, that it is not dissimilar to electricity, to plumbing, to the brick and mortar that we've thought about our buildings. And that when we start to think of it that way, we move beyond, is this a toy? Is this something fun to evolve our business? Or is this critical to understanding who's in our venue and what they're doing and how to improve the quality of their experience? And so I believe AI is going to be a critical factor of smart venue design going forward. And we've written a whole report about it with Intel that you can go find on our website.
Perfect. Well, maybe we can drop that link on our LinkedIn chat afterwards so people can check it out. And final question, I think we're going to wrap things up, but final question for you two. I know you're both very passionate about storytelling. I've heard you both talk about it. And as a communications person, that gets me really excited. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about the intersection between storytelling and space and data, because I could see how you would think data and storytelling don't feel interconnected. So Abe, maybe you can start. He just posted a great post on LinkedIn today just about this topic. So
Yeah. This is like my 2023, passion project, is improving business storytelling in the sports industry. I think germane to the conversation we've been having today, the point that I would probably leave with this audience about storytelling and architecture and data as it pertains to sports is that if we can move beyond thinking of a sports stadium as a means to an end, right? Move beyond thinking of a sports stadium as a simple space for delivery of content, whether that is, a video board or the action on the field. But think of it instead as a storytelling medium itself, that everyone who walks in there is going to be participating in the storytelling that is taking place in that moment, in that space. That somewhat radical thought changes your perception of the role design plays in how you approach what that building could be. Obviously, this is my video game developer's mind frame, applying to this a bit, where you have unlimited control in a digital world for what the architecture of that space is like. But if we think about, and this is, this came up in the first conversation I had with Bill, if we think about Stadia as storytelling media, it unlocks tremendous exciting potential around what we can do with those spaces and how we can drive interest in attending those. And data is about knowing your audience, because you would never write a story without first knowing the audience that you're writing that story for. And so that's how I imagine all of those pieces coming together.
I love that. Bill, anything to add?
Okay, that's hard to follow because I agree with all of it. I'll just add this to it. I think that for me, we have evolved culturally into a place where we have a very hard time interacting with each other without the crutch of a phone or a computer. And I think that sports and architecture and better understanding the behavior of people is all pointing us to the most important thing, which is the social experience that comes out of that. And, there's nothing like, 80,000 people in a stadium all cheering for the same goal. There's nothing about that sort of side by side camaraderie. And we're losing that. And as societally, I think we're losing it. And so for me, that's what we always talk about. What is the collective goal for all of us is to get people to come back together, celebrate with each other, and interact on a social level. And I think that that's the true value of what we're all after right now. And it's very different than it was, and it's going to continue to evolve. So it's been an amazing, interesting journey as a designer to be challenged with this in a way that you feel like you can make a positive contribution. So that would be my 2 bits.
Wow. That's a great note to end on. Bill and Abe, thank you both so much. This has been a really great conversation, and hopefully this has provided each of you in the audience with some helpful insights. If you do have additional questions, don't hesitate to leave them in the comments. I know Abe and Bill will both keep an eye on those and can engage with you there. And then be sure to follow both Abe and Bill on LinkedIn as well if you aren't, and you can contact them. Thanks again for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.